Smalltalk is one example. Squeak, Python, and Java are others. It's tempting to speculate whether these high-level programming languages could be used in conjunction with various syntax-defining standards to capture the semantics of syntactic structures in ways that would preserve both the syntax and the semantics of digital objects. It seems likely that work is ongoing in this area of research, and I would urge those interested in the problem to carry out exploration in the worlds comprising computer science, digital library design, and computer languages. There are additional deficiencies in our present world of digital objects, and one of the most pressing to remedy is the way in which we make reference to online information. It's generally the case that references to uniform resource locators, for example, require some kind of lookup to translate the reference into a definite place on the internet at which to look for the referenced object. Many of these objects depend on the domain name system that translates domain names like www.google.com into numerical internet addresses like 209.85.173.103. It should be obvious that this mapping function from name to address has the potential hazard that material referenced by the domain name may become inaccessible if the computer at the target destination is no longer accessible, or if the domain name becomes unregistered or is repurposed in the future. These references are therefore in some sense ephemeral and do not satisfy the desire for longevity of reference that digital librarians, historians, and others will rely upon in the future. There are other attempts that have been made to develop standardized and long-term references. One is called the Handle system that my colleague Robert Kahn and I worked on together at CNRI in years past. Implicit in this Handle system is the interesting problem of establishing long-lived and interpretable metadata about the digital object and its characteristics. The problem of designing an extensible syntax and semantics for this metadata is another instance of the problem of persistent meaning. The deeper one penetrates into the problem, the larger it seems to grow. Placing these questions into an international context that includes all the languages of the world adds the question of language representations in digital form. The Unicode table of scripts for the world's languages is itself a major undertaking. Its coding of characters can form a common framework for the representation of information of all the world's languages. HTML and XML that I mentioned before make use of this important and evolving table. Language itself changes and evolves, as do alphabets over centuries. Looking at this problem from the perspective of 1,000 years or more produces a sobering view of the magnitude of the problem of stable referencing in a digital world. One is tempted to suggest that these questions are part of a larger notion of information ecology in which institutions, technology, society, and the global economy play important and dynamic roles. That all of these moving parts need to be coordinated through some underlying organizing principles represents one of the major challenges of the internet and its global utility. There's ample room for a great deal of experimentation, scholarly research, and organizational collaboration. Well, I hope that these brief remarks will trigger interest in the minds of scholars in search of serious dissertation topics, or those dedicating themselves to the longevity of the online universe. Success in this work will benefit generations to come and offer our descendants the opportunity to appreciate and even experience the digital world of this century. It is our way to communicate with the populations of the future and to convey to them our hopes, fears, beliefs, successes, and mistakes. While we cannot ourselves peer deeply into the future, we can at least offer the future an opportunity to see deeply into their digital past with a clarity that I hope will be appreciated and perhaps also essential to their understanding of their own digital world that we can only dimly imagine. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, doctor Cerf, por su interesante discurso. Luego comentaremos. Puede ocupar ahora la cátedra el profesor Schrock.
Rector magnífico, autoridades académicas, distinguidos doctores, señoras y señores. Es un placer y un gran honor recibir hoy el título de Doctor Honoris Causa que la Universidad de Zaragoza me ha otorgado. Durante los últimos 40 años de mi carrera, he visto prosperar la química inorgánica en esta universidad y por toda España. Varios químicos de Estados Unidos han tenido la oportunidad de ser parte del desarrollo de la química inorgánica en España a través de colaboraciones con científicos españoles. Desgraciadamente, no he tenido esa oportunidad, pero sí he observado con placer y con orgullo cómo científicos españoles han contribuido a la química que ha llegado a ser parte de mi propio interés e investigación, es decir, la química organometálica y catálisis, áreas en las que científicos de la Universidad de Zaragoza han realizado contribuciones relevantes. Yo considero mi parte del premio Nobel de Química del año 2005 como una recompensa por los avances en la química organometálica. Las contribuciones de los químicos españoles en esta frontera importante entre la química orgánica e inorgánica son conocidas internacionalmente. Un premio Nobel. ¿Cuántos científicos han tenido la oportunidad de lograr ese pináculo de realización? ¿Cuántos trabajan en pos de ese premio? ¿Cómo se llega a él? ¿Cómo cambia la vida después de ganar tal reconocimiento? Me gustaría dedicar el tiempo hoy a responder a estas y otras preguntas semejantes que rodean al premio Nobel, por lo menos desde mi perspectiva. Y ahora, pero no quiero torturarlos más con mi español. Por favor, permítanme cambiar al inglés. The Nobel Foundation was established by Alfred Nobel, scientist, inventor, entrepreneur, author, and pacifist, in his will of 1895. Alfred Nobel was born in Stockholm on October 21st, 1833, into a family of engineers, and died on December 10th, 1896. Alfred spent his formative years in St. Petersburg, Russia, where he became fluent in Russian, French, English, and German. Around 1863, Nobel became interested in developing nitroglycerin as an explosive. Nitroglycerin had been discovered in 1847 in Italy by Ascanio Sobrero. Unfortunately, nitroglycerin is unpredictably sensitive to shock and temperature. Several explosions, including one in 1864, in which Alfred's brother, Emil, and 4 others were killed, resulted in experimentation with nitroglycerin being banned in Stockholm. Nobel found that nitroglycerin mixed with kieselguhr, diatomaceous earth, yielded a paste that was much less shock sensitive than nitroglycerin itself, but still could be detonated with a blasting cap, which was in turn ignited with a fuse made with black powder. In 1867, he patented this material as dynamite, from the Greek dynamis, meaning power. He was 34 years old. The invention of dynamite, along with drills that could drill into rock, together dramatically reduced the cost of blasting rock, removing rock, which was the key requirement for many construction projects. By age 40, Alfred Nobel had made his greatest discoveries, had built up a worldwide industrial empire, and had become wealthy. For Nobel, science, invention, and business had become one. Alfred Nobel was educated not only as an engineer and scientist, but also as a humanist and philosopher. During his life, he wrote dramatic works and became interested in philosophical discourse. He also became a pacifist. Alfred Nobel never married. When Nobel passed away in 1896, on December 10th, his brief will of 1895 dictated that his fortune was to be used to establish 5 prizes each year in the area of physics, chemistry, medicine and physiology, literature, and peace. The prizes were to be awarded by the Swedish Academies on December 10th in Stockholm, except the Peace Prize, which was to be awarded in Oslo, Norway. Norway did not become independent from Sweden until 1912. His will stipulated that up to 3 recipients would receive each prize for contributions that were of greatest benefit to mankind in the previous year. And the amount of prize money was intended to allow the recipient to become financially independent. Both of these stipulations by Nobel were too impractical to enforce. The first Nobel Prizes were awarded in 1901 to Röntgen in physics for the discovery of X-rays, Van Hoff in chemistry, von Behring in medicine and physiology, Prudhomme in literature, and Dunant and Passy in peace. The 6th Nobel Prize that we know today in economics was established in 1968 by the Bank of Sweden in the honor of Alfred Nobel. For years, the potential recipients are discussed by committees for each discipline made up of members of the Swedish academies and chosen in a given year by Swedes in each discipline. The records of deliberations become public only after 51 years. Nobel Awards are given only to living persons, are irreversible, and are not negotiable. There's no restriction as to the number of times one can win a Nobel Prize, but since less than 800 awards have been given in 106 years, and since decades often pass before the impact of the work for which the award is given is realized, the probability of receiving the award more than once becomes vanishingly small. Yet multiple awards have been made. Marie and Pierre Curie were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1903 for joint research in radiation phenomena. Marie Curie also was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1911, only 8 years later, for the discovery of radium and polonium. In chemistry, only one person has won more than one award. That was Fred Sanger, alone in 1958, quote, for his work on the structure of proteins, especially that of insulin, end quote, and with 2 others, Paul Berg and Walter Gilbert, in 1980 for his contributions concerning the determination of base sequences in nucleic acids. The most awards to a single person or institution, 3, in fact, have gone to the International Red Cross for peace. The American chemist Linus Pauling is the only person to have won 2 prizes alone, one in chemistry in 1954 and one in peace in 1962. Most recipients of early awards in the sciences were European. Today, approximately half the Nobel Awards, on average, are given to Americans. In 2007, the 10 million Swedish kroner award for a Nobel Prize was worth approximately 1.5 million US dollars. The US and South Africa are the only countries to tax a Nobel Prize. The amount of money certainly is not sufficient to become financially independent, but it is the honor, not the money, that matters to most recipients. Once an individual receives a Nobel Prize, he or she gains 2 more names, Nobel laureate, forever. As of 2007, 777 individuals and 20 organizations have received Nobel Prizes. 34 recipients have been women. I have to admit that I never gave any thought to winning a Nobel Prize. I've never worked as a scientist in order to receive any prize. I'm a scientist because I find the process of unlocking unlocking nature's secrets enormously satisfying. I also have an opportunity to instill that excitement in graduate and postdoctoral students and to teach undergraduate students the principles of chemistry. Finally, I have the opportunity to change permanently the course of a scientific discipline. Yes, I was shocked to receive a phone call at 5:30 a.m. on October 5th, 2005, from the Swedish Committee for Chemistry, telling me that I was to share the prize for chemistry with Robert Grubbs, an American, and Yves Chauvin, a Frenchman. Yes, when I entered the Nobel Museum in Stockholm on December 7th, 2005, I was shocked to realize the implications of what had happened and to see my name added to the list of great men and women scientists of the past. So why me? As a child growing up in Indiana in the United States, I was always curious about the world around me, and in particular about natural phenomena. I was given a chemistry set for my 8th birthday and became hooked on transforming matter, which is a manifestation of my love of building things and is what chemists do at a molecular level. I created a small laboratory where I carried out simple experiments, combining acids and bases to make salts, making pleasant-smelling esters, and so forth, following the directions in chemistry laboratory texts handed down to me. As I became aware of the power of burning natural gas, the lowly alcohol burner ultimately was replaced by a high-tech Bunsen burner capable of putting out a good deal of heat, enough to melt metals in a porcelain crucible, and even sodium chloride, which ultimately led to my most eye-opening experiment, the electrolysis of sodium chloride to produce sodium and chlorine. I actually had transmuted matter. I felt like Sir Humphrey Davy himself. As my laboratory grew considerably in size, diversity, and capability, I had at my disposal relatively sophisticated and, if misused, dangerous substances in a small room in the basement. Oddly enough, I came to know something about nitration of glycerin myself. Thankfully, there were no serious mishaps. I was 14 years old when we moved to San Diego, California in 1959. There I found a laboratory supply house where I could buy classic equipment and a drugstore where I could buy basic chemicals with some adult help, of course. I entered a regional science fair with a project that concerned osmotic processes in sea urchin eggs and somehow managed to win a prize for it. I always assumed I would attend college and study chemistry. I attended Riverside, which is about 90 miles north of San Diego. I accepted a summer job where I learned how to blow glass, construct vacuum lines, and measure low concentrations of atmospheric photolysis products using a multi-pass Perkin-Elmer infrared machine. A talented and enthusiastic teacher in physical chemistry named Jerry Bell encouraged me to apply to Harvard University for graduate school, which I did. To my delight, I was accepted. Although I enjoyed organic and physical chemistry at Riverside, I found the chemistry of the many other elements in the periodic table also fascinating. I went to Harvard with no plan as to what kind of research I would like to do. My desire to manipulate compositions of matter did not seem to fit with physical chemistry at Harvard at that time. An assistant professor who had just arrived at Harvard by the name of John Osborne told me about transition metal chemistry, about the excitement of creating new, colorful compounds, and about catalysis by transition metal species, such as the rhodium catalysts he had developed as part of his PhD thesis with Jeffrey Wilkinson at Imperial College. That sounded like what I wanted to do, make molecules that might prove useful to someone. So I signed on. In August of 1971, I finished and defended my PhD thesis, and I also married my wife, Nancy, in the audience today. Only one job was available at that time, for which there were several hundred applicants. I was fortunate to obtain a postdoctoral fellowship from the National Science Foundation to work at Cambridge for Jack Lewis, later Sir Jack, ultimately Lord Jack, who will celebrate his 80th birthday this year. I accepted an offer from the Central Research Department at DuPont, which at that time was essentially an academic department in an industrial setting. Nothing close to it exists anymore today. At DuPont, I shared a lab with the remarkable Fred Tebbe, who was studying, among other things, reactions of ethyl aluminum reagents with titanosin dichloride. His most important and surprising discovery was what has come to be known as Tebbe's reagent, a species that contains a methylene, a CH2 group between titanium and aluminum. I was drawn to the synthesis of tantalum pentaalkyl complexes and soon had made highly volatile and highly unstable pentamethyl tantalum. In July of 1974, the attempted synthesis of pentaneopentyl tantalum led to the first high oxidation state carbene or alkylidine complex. Shortly thereafter, I prepared the first isoluble terminal methylene complex. At DuPont, I also first heard the term olefin metathesis and started to follow the literature on that subject, thinking that the new tantalum alkylidines I had prepared might react with olefins and might be relevant to olefin metathesis. In 1975, I received an offer to move to MIT. MIT fulfilled my dream of obtaining an academic position at a top institution. I was fortunate to obtain support from the National Science Foundation and to attract 10 students by the end of my third year. High oxidation state alkylidine and alkylidine chemistry developed rapidly thanks to the talented students and support for them. By 1980, we had transferred the principles behind the early tantalum carbon multiple bond chemistry to tungsten, molybdenum, and rhenium, and by the mid-1980s had developed what I call